Yo, what's up, everybody? I'm Bob Walters. This is Locked Up Sports NCAA Tournament update. St. John's with a buzzer beater win over Kansas yesterday. A couple shockers, not too many real Cinderellas, a lot of chalk. A one seed goes down, all kinds of stuff going on yesterday. And in the first 4 days of the tournament, we got it all for you right here. Locked Up Sports coming up next. What's up, everybody? I'm Bob Walters. Don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe. Every little bit helps. If you're listening on the podcast end, leave us a review over at Apple Podcasts or at Spotify. And if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss anything that's going on. And as always, a wild scene in the NCAA tournament. It's not as crazy. The lowest seed we have left is an 11, Texas, who played in the play-in games in one of the first 4 games or whatever they are. And there's also a 9 seed. One of the 1 seeds, Florida, was eliminated yesterday in a shocker that I feel like hasn't gotten as much attention as it deserves because everybody's kind of been focused on the St. John's game and what happened there. St. John's getting a huge win. Biggest win they've had under Pitino. Biggest win, since they went to the Elite 8 back in 1999. And a win that they just absolutely desperately needed because of what happened last year. And, if they lost that game yesterday, even if they lose like a tight one, which it would have been devastating anyway because they blew a 14-point lead. And if they would have lost the game, it would have hurt because especially after what happened last year, they win the back-to-back Big East regular season titles. They win the back-to-back Big East tournament championships, and then they can't get out of the first weekend in the NCAA tournament. That would be a stain on the 2 seasons, the 2 excellent seasons that St. John's has had, 2 out of the 3 with Pitino. But Dylan Darling comes through with the layup. He goes the length of, basically from midcourt all the way to the hoop in 3 point whatever seconds it was. Kansas, it was a weird situation at the end of the game because Kansas had like 4 or 5 fouls to give. So they were fouling St. John's as they were coming up the court. They let a couple seconds run off, then they foul them. Then they let a couple seconds run off, then they foul them again. And what they wanted to do was have it so they get it down to where they have no more fouls to give, but there's only like, a second left or like under a second left. But what they did was when the earlier fouls, they fouled too early and they left them with 3 seconds left. They had no more fouls to give. And that 3 seconds is an eternity. You could go almost the length of the court in 3 seconds, most of the length of the court. You probably have to take a runner if you were coming from underneath your own hoop, but they were they were near, midcourt, and they got it to Darling, and he just took it and went, and it was the first basket he made all day. He made 1 basket, and that was it. And he looked awful on the other shots. A lot of St. John's looked awful. A lot of Kansas looked awful. It was a pretty badly played first half, and into the second half. I mean, St. John's shot 36% from the field, and they won the game. Now, Kansas was 44%. The big thing that I noticed that was just out of character were the threes. I mean, St. John's took 1,000,000 threes. They were 11 for 35. St. John's doesn't take 35 threes in 3 games sometimes. Kansas was 5 for 14. And Bryce Hopkins he scored 18 points. He's not a big 3-point shooter, right? They got Sannon, they got Sellers, they got Mitchell. But you got Bryce Hopkins, who's usually, he's one of the better players on the team, but he's usually a go-to-the-hoop kind of guy. He'll hit a 3 once and then. He scored 18 points, and every one of them was on a 3. 6 for 11 on threes, and he got 18 points, and that was the big one. He hit the big one at 62-61. St. John's was up 62-61. He hits the big 3 there to put them up 4. And I think, if he doesn't hit that, they probably don't win the game. There was a collapse in there somewhere in the second half. St. John's had a 14-point lead with 7 minutes left. And it just kind of methodically, Kansas just played their game. They didn't panic. They didn't start throwing up threes. They got it to their guy, Their big guy who's going to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft when he comes out. He's the best player on the court out of anybody there yesterday. But they let him kind of take over the game, and he kind of did. But the 14-point deficit was just too much. I mean, they came down, they tied it. I was surprised, too, that Kansas tied it, that they went so quick with the I think there was a difference in the shot clock, and so they were going to have to shoot it. But they left 13 seconds on the clock when St. John's got the ball back, tie game, 65-65 after the 2 free throws. There was 13 seconds on the clock. Now Kansas had like five fouls to give, so they just fouled them as they came up the floor, eating time off the clock. And like I said, what they wanted to do was get it to where there was basically nothing, and it was going to be just a heave, and then they go to overtime, and hopefully they win in overtime. That was their plan. But because they fouled the first couple ones, they let, it was like 1 second came off the clock, foul. You want to let 2 or 3 seconds come off the clock because you want to get it down to no time left. They didn't do that. They left him with 3 seconds left, and then Darling just went the length of the floor. And there wasn't much defense on him. He wasn't really contested. He went right to the hoop, layup with the right hand. He's a lefty, so with the right hand, I guess that's something. And he's the hero. And out of nowhere, St. John's now into the Sweet 16. They have a date with Duke on Friday. And listen, Duke is beatable. Duke looks beatable in this tournament, right? They're the best team all year in the country, but by a good amount. Even you could say Michigan too, but Duke was right there, one of the 2 best teams in the country all year. Then, right before the game, but I think it was the North Carolina game before the ACC tournament starts, Caleb Foster, one of the best players, bam, out with foot injury, has to get surgery. They're saying he's questionable for Friday. I mean, to me, that seems like a quick turnaround to be able to get surgery on your foot. What, three weeks ago, and then you're going to be playing it in an NCAA tournament game? I don't see that happening. But they have the 2 brothers. They have the who are just 2 of the best players in the country. They're 2 different players. One of them's a high lottery pick going to be going to the NBA. Is one of the better players. He's an inside tall guy, plays down low. The other guy's a guard, and he plays. He shoots the ball and he plays defense. And it's going to be an interesting game. And I think, listen, if Duke was ever going to be able to be beat, they could definitely be beat now, right? They played with fire with Siena, down 13 in the second half, down 11 at halftime. They were worried. They were worried. If you're a Duke fan and you were watching that game, you were worried. And they kind of they blew past them a little bit in the last couple minutes. Siena just couldn't hit any buckets, and the 1 seed kind of overtook what they do. And they just cruised past Siena in the last couple of minutes and ended up winning. But if that game was 4 minutes shorter, then Siena would have won the game. That's a 36-minute game instead of a 40-minute game. Siena wins. And Duke's out. And then they didn't play great in their second round matchup, but they did win by, what was the score? Yeah, so they did win 81-58. But it was closer than that. Because there were times in the second half where TCU was right there, within arm's length of Duke. Duke, again, they pulled away in the second. They're a better team. Duke's a better team than St. John's. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But it feels like they could be picked off. And it's not as impossible ask as it seemed like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Oh, if they get there, and you listen, either way, you play with house money. They did what they needed to do. They got into the second weekend. They got past the point of what happened last year where they ran into the tough Arkansas team, and then they just it was just a buzzsaw. They couldn't shoot it. They couldn't shoot the ball. They couldn't hit any shots, and they couldn't hit any shots yesterday. I mean, when you're from the field, St. John's was 25 of 69, and Kansas just was terrible. Kansas was throwing the ball out of bounds and throwing the ball to St. John's all the time, and that's what cost them the game. Just turnover after turnover, and St. John's had a lot of turnovers too. The turnovers. Let's see the numbers. They had 16 turnovers. And that's partly, congratulations to St. John's with the defense that they played. But a lot of them were just unforced. They threw the ball out of bounds, not even close on passes. They were off yesterday, Kansas. And I think St. John's was still the better team either way. But they didn't play the game that they wanted to. And give them credit. They came back. They fought back. They got it even with 13 seconds left. Tied it up, and then they just, one of those March Madness type deals, and whoever had the ball last ended up winning the game. And it was St. John's, and they get the buzzer beater, and it's crazy. And that's all you're hearing today is people talking about St. John's. You got to remember baseball, opening day. Yankees have opening day on Wednesday in San Francisco. Mets opening day Thursday, and this is the biggest story. And that's a lot. It says a lot. because New York's a baseball town, but the St. John's has captivated now the city. They got the city. We don't get this very often, right? They don't get this a lot. The college basketball. St. John's usually stinks. Seton Hall's not really New York. And the other teams we have that ever do anything are mid-majors. You'll have like Siena. You'll have a Hofstra, or Iona was good for a while when Pitino was the Iona coach. They were good for a while too. So like you have that, but they're mid-majors. They're not winning a championship. Now St. John's they have it. They won their first tournament. It's 3 tournaments. The NCAA tournament is 3 separate 2-game tournaments. They won the first 2-game tournament last night with the layup at the buzzer. Then now they got to go play another tournament. It's a 2-game tournament. You win that, and then it's just it's you're in the Final Four, and then it's just then it's all about house money. I mean, St. John's, if Pitino could take them to a Final Four this year, and it's realistic that he can, then that would be incredible. St. John's they've been to one Final Four. They've been playing basketball for over 100 years. One Final Four. They lost obviously in the national semifinal. That was with the Ewing and there was 3 teams in the Big East in the Final Four that year, and you could very well see I don't know. UConn hasn't played great, but you could see St. John's UConn. I think that would be the Final Four matchup, right? Let me see. Sweet 16. No, that would be the regional final for a trip to the Final Four. And how fun would that be? That means we're 1 game away from that, possibly. I don't know if UConn's going to beat Michigan State. Michigan State's a good team. They're playing well. UConn's kind of, here they play well here and there. They got a great game from Taris Reed where he scored all their points. He had a double-double like 6 minutes into the game. But now you get Michigan State, and it's a whole different animal. But hey, it's not unreasonable that UConn beats Michigan State and that St. John's beats Duke. And then we get round 4. St. John's, UConn, neutral floor, Elite 8, regional final for a trip to the Final Four. I mean, that's wild stuff if they get that. Nobody saw that coming. But I mean, it could just as easily be, Michigan State and Duke, which would be a fantastic game too. Obviously, around here, we're rooting, for St. John's, I'd root for St. John's UConn because I think St. John's would have a better chance to beat UConn. Now, the threes, obviously, I think what happened was Kansas said, let them take the threes. We're going to let them shoot threes. We don't think they can make the threes. We think they'll miss them. We'll make it so it's so appetizing you can't not take the 3. And what happened? They knocked down. I mean, they didn't shoot good, right? 30% from 3. It's not great. 11 of 35. They just hoisted up every play down the court. And so that's not St. John's how they play. They usually don't shoot threes because they don't shoot them good. They don't have guys that want to shoot them. Hopkins out of nowhere shoot them. Usually it's Sannon or it's Sellers or it's Mitchell. Mitchell will take whatever shot you give him. But yesterday it was Hopkins taking the shots, and Zuby played another good game. Couple big rebounds underneath. St. John's was good on the offensive rebounds until the last 5 minutes when everything just went haywire. And you saw it just slowly slipping away. That lead got down to 8, and then 5, and then 3, and then St. John's was missing shots. And then they tie it with 13 seconds left, and that you just felt that St. John's had to win it there. They didn't win it there; they were going to lose in overtime because they had no momentum. They just collapsed, a 14-point collapse, and your head spinning. Now you're in overtime. You got 5 minutes. They would have lost. I'm telling you, they would have lost. But they get Dylan Darling to come in, the hero. He called the play. He went over to Pitino. He said, give me the ball. We're running this play. He hasn't made a shot all day. Not one. And he looked bad on a couple of the threes that he took. Like it hit just the backboard. It wasn't even close. And he went in there and he said, give me the ball. And, Pitino said, okay. He got it around midcourt and he just right to the hoop. I'm saying 3 seconds is a long time. You don't think it is. You think 3 seconds, how's he going to get halfway across the court? But he does. It's like 4 strides, and then they're right there. And nobody even really contested him. It was an easy layup, which I was surprised about. But, hey, you take it. Survive in advance, right? Doesn't matter how you win these games. Because anybody can lose any of these games. So you just take it. It doesn't matter how we won. Forget about the collapse. Forget about this. You won the game. Survive in advance. On to the next tournament. Starts on Friday for St. John's and Duke. And you try and win 2 more games, and then you get to the promised land, which is the Final Four. and you just and it's something that's a forever thing then. So they're still 2 wins away, 2 tough games away. They're going to be underdogs against Duke either way you look at it. Whether Foster plays or not, which I don't think he will. It just seems too quick. Three weeks for a foot surgery. But hey, it's a lot of fun. We get another week of it, right? We get it up to Friday. Now, as far as the rest of the tournament and the rest of the Sweet 16 go, you don't have any of the High Point. Like that would be a true Cinderella. If High Point would have won their game, they're into the Sweet 16, a 14 seed, somebody nobody ever heard of. I had a guy today in the locker room say at work, and he's like, I was rooting for High Point. And I'm like, who wasn't rooting for High Point? Like, nobody's ever heard of them. How could you'd be a jerk if you were rooting against High Point, unless you're a team of the other team. Like, how can you root against High Point? And that's what you're rooting for. But you do have some low seeds. You had some surprises. I think that the Iowa knocking out Florida was huge. That kid hit that 3 down 2. He buries the 3 on the transition, and Florida misses it at the other end. They're out. I mean, you got Michigan State. So these are your Sweet 16 teams now. Let's go through them here. You got St. John's, Duke, Michigan State, UConn. That's the East bracket. Then you got, this is very interesting here in the South bracket, because you got Iowa, who just knocked off number 1 Florida, who has that 9-foot tall guy who's just some kind of freak. 7'8", I think he is. 7'8", and they lost. But you got Iowa playing Nebraska. First time Nebraska's ever been into the Sweet 16, which is surprising because they're big. They're a big school. So you got Iowa, Nebraska. That's the Cinderella kind of portion of the bracket, because you got Iowa's the 9 seed against a 4. Nebraska is going to be favored to get to a regional final here probably against the winner of Houston and Illinois. That's a 3-2 game, because the 1 seed in that bracket was Florida, and they're out. Then you got Arizona, who's kind of been cruising along. They had a little tougher time, but they had no issue with that yesterday with winning that game. They won going away later. So you get Arizona and Arkansas. Arkansas is tough. We know, people from here know Arkansas is tough because they saw them last year at St. John's, and they shut you down with the defense. They make shots. They have a good point guard. That's the game. Then you get to the lower portion of the bracket, and you have Texas. Here's your 11 seed. That's the lowest seed. Texas. They played in the first 4. They won one more game than everybody else. And they're going up against Iowa State, which is a real good Iowa State team. Iowa State has played real well. They blew out Kentucky, who got the miracle win in the first round with the 3s, and then the overtime win. That was a miracle. They pulled that right out of their ass, because they were losing that game. The kid hits the miracle, like almost half court 3 to send it to overtime. They win in overtime, but Iowa State blew them out by 20 points. And then you got Virginia, who lost to Tennessee. So you got Tennessee, the 6 seed, Iowa State. Tennessee, I don't think is gonna. I think you're looking at an Iowa State, Michigan game, because Michigan and Alabama play, and people are saying look out for Alabama. I think Michigan's better than Alabama. When Michigan plays as good as they do, they're better than anybody. They win by games by 40 points on a regular basis in the beginning of the season. They'd beat teams by 40 points, then they'd go and beat a team by 38 points, and then they win by 35 points. They were literally like running teams out of the gym on the road, blowouts all over the place in a big conference. And that's the Big Ten. So that was going on there. UCLA against UConn last night was disappointing. I think UCLA was disappointing. This is what people saying. Oh, they're back. They're the greatest college basketball school with the greatest history, and they're not back, because they went up against a UConn team that hasn't played well, didn't play well in the first round, and they got blown out. And I thought it would be closer, and I think most people did think it was going to be closer, but UConn they blew them out. And then Tyrus Reed had a big game. Like I said, he had a double 5 minutes into the game. So So, I mean, it's an interesting bracket. It's not as when you don't get the big upsets in the first 4 days here, which is the body of the tournament. These 4 days, the 4 days that we just did, that's really the tournament. That's where you get your upsets and your crazy stuff and just teams you never heard of, high points and stuff like that going, and it's wild and teams are losing and now the smoke is cleared. We have 16 teams, and now it's like more of a basketball situation thing where it's more like the basketball fans are more going to be engaged now. It's not as so much that the lady from accounting is going to be sitting there watching the game because unless she has a chance in the pool, like she's not going to have interest. You have the interest in the first 4 days. That's the body of the tournament. Now you get down 16 teams. Now it gets more serious. It's basketball. But when you have teams like 14 seeds and 15 seeds and they get to the Sweet 16, it's great. It's a great story. But what it does is when they get to the Sweet 16, more often than not, they're overmatched. They get. It's not a good game, and they lose. And you waste a game where you sat there and you watch them lose by 30. All right, great to see them get here, but because the Butlers of the world and the FGCU and the VCUs, those are few and far between. They very rarely did those Cinderella teams make it to the Final Four. I mean, Butler was the first. I remember that made it. VCU might have been the first with Shaka Smart. And when they do, that's great. But, I mean, it very rarely does that happen. Usually the Cinderella, the clock strikes 12 and the Sweet 16, and it's a bad game. Now, because it's a lot of chalk, you got a lot of higher seeds in there, you're looking at some very competitive games. Let's see, like the Michigan-Alabama, I think that's going to be a competitive game. Purdue and Texas is a real good game. Purdue's playing red hot. They came into their conference tournament as a 7 seed, and they just blew through everybody and won it. They got themselves into a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They've struggled a bit, but they played well. They played Texas. Real good game. Arizona, Arkansas, that's one of your better games. There's not really many bad games here, right? Because even the one that has the 2 higher seeds, where it's Nebraska and Iowa, they're playing each other. So it's not like, okay, a 1 seed going up against the 9 seed, Iowa team. Nope, Iowa already knocked out the 1 seed. They beat Florida. And then you got Houston, Illinois, another good game. I think Houston's better, but you never know. Anybody can win these games. Michigan State, UConn is very interesting. And of course, Duke and St. John's. And Duke and St. John's is, I mean, you can't ask for more. I think they have a puncher's chance here. Definitely. With the injuries, and Duke's not playing well. They could have been picked off by Siena. What an embarrassment that would have been. But they're like, survive in advance. But you put the game behind you. You don't worry about how you played. You just win the damn thing and move on. And now they're both here in St. John's and Patino. This justifies the season for Patino. They got here. This is where they needed to be. This is where they needed to get to. Now you could just go and throw caution to the wind and just go out there and just try and beat them. And it's possible. You can win. St. John's is a good team. They got one of the better big men in the country. It's Zuby Ejiofor. You got Hopkins, who takes over games in different types of ways. Their defense is just incredible in some moments. And if they could hit the shots, and I think, listen, you're going to have Shannon play better. They got a lot out of Mitchell, out of Jackson yesterday. Jackson was good yesterday, hitting some threes, playing like that was one of the better games he played. And then you gotta get Mitchell, and they had Prey bury a 3. But last night the turnovers by Kansas, the threes by St. John's, and then the kind of a little bit of a mistake on the fouling, leaving a little bit too much time on the clock is what cost them and it gave St. John's a win. And you don't give them back. You don't give NCAA tournament wins back unless you're Rick Pitino and you get fined sanctions and you have to give championships back. But that's a whole nother story. So listen, how's your bracket? Is it any good? No perfect brackets left. Yesterday after the St. John's game, I think there were 2 perfect brackets left. 2 out of 28 million. After that, none. So there's no perfect brackets this year. Another year coming on without a perfect bracket. Will we ever see a perfect bracket? My money's on no. It's just the infinitesimal odds. It's not going to happen. You have a better chance of hitting the lottery. than you do of having a perfect bracket. But yet it's a thing that people strive for, and it never was. When I was growing up, it wasn't like there's this many perfect brackets left. You just accepted science, kind of. Like there aren't going to be any perfect brackets. I remember asking my buddies, "You think there's ever been a perfect bracket?" There's never been a recorded perfect bracket, and that's why people like, Warren Buffett and I think I'm not sure if it's him, but somebody has upped it to $1 billion now. If you have a perfect bracket, that's how sure they are that you're not going to get a perfect bracket. Is that someone's willing to put up $1 billion? Obviously, it gets insured, from one of these insurance company, but they put up $1 billion, and the fact that they can even find an insurance company to insure $1 billion or close, half of it or whatever they insure, shows you how confident they are that there will never be a perfect bracket. Because if they were sure, if there was really a risk, they wouldn't be putting up $1 billion. The insurance company would never cover it. But someone is, and I think it's usually Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett always put up like $10 million or $1 million for the perfect bracket. And what it does is it gives him free advertising. He knows he's not going to have to put up the $10 million. No one's getting the perfect bracket. And he gets the free advertising on, ESPN or CBS or wherever he does the thing. And inevitably, of course, usually by sometimes by Saturday morning, it's over. There's no perfect brackets. This one lasted into Sunday, into the second round. So, kudos to the couple people. At one point yesterday, there was 22 perfect brackets. It went down to 2, and then that was it. They lost. So it was a lot of fun. There were some buzzer beaters. I think the Iowa State game, the Iowa-Florida game was just a great game, and it's the 3, and that, March Madness in its finest. St. John's finish was March Madness in its finest. It was a layup, not a shot, but you're splitting hairs there. So and we got another week, and we got another game for St. John's coming up, and it's Duke. Doesn't get better than that. It's probably, they haven't put the times out yet. I'm guessing Friday. I'm guessing they'll probably be the second game, or they might just put them as that first standalone game at 7:00 on Friday. They'll have like a game that goes, and then they'll have a game start at 7, whatever. And they'll have a game start at 7, and then it'll be like 8:30 will be the next start, and they kind of stagger them through, and it ends usually around midnight or whatever. And that's how it works. So I would imagine St. John's and Duke will either be the 7 or the 8:30 game. And then, they're coming back east. They get to go. They're playing in Washington, D.C. There will be plenty of Duke fans there because there are plenty of Duke fans everywhere, and they travel well. And you're closer to, North Carolina in D.C. than you are to New York. So, but hey, listen, St. John's had a lot of people out there out west, all the way out in San Diego. It was a good crowd there for St. John's. A lot of red. And they saw a hell of a game, and they saw resilience from this team, and they saw great coaching from Pitino and Bill Self. And, it came down to it. They had the ball last. It was their night. It was a March Madness moment that St. John's has, that Darling will have forever. He will get to carry that with him. He'll be seeing it forever, be telling that story forever, rest of his life. He's now one of the buzzer beaters in March Madness, and it will be on TV every March. You'll see it, and that's something that he could have and that he could hold for the rest of his life, and that's great too. So St. John's Duke, we'll have more on St. John's Duke coming up. My bracket, I'm in my best. I have 2 brackets, but one of them with the Michigan winning the championship, I'm in 9 millionth place in the 66th percentile. The other one, where I have Houston winning, I am in 15.6 millionth place, and I am 43 percentile. As far as the groups go, I'm in one pool. We all know I've never won a pool. It doesn't look like this is going to be the year, but I'm not out of it yet. I'm in with my Michigan bracket, with Michigan winning the whole thing. I am in 12th place. I think it's out of like 37. And then On my Houston bracket, I'm in 19th place. So I'm in bad shape there. But when you look at the max points, I could get 1660 for my bracket that's in 9th place. And I could get 1660. I could get the same amount of points. So I'm in bad shape. You need the champion. If you're going to win these pools, you need the champion. Because you don't put too much thought into it. By the time you get down to the champion, picking the champion. But that's what it comes down to. You need to win. You need to have the right champion in there. Because it's the most points. The points increase as you go down, get further, deeper into the tournament. But whatever. I don't expect better chance to be a perfect bracket than me winning one of these damn pools. So, a lot of fun. St. John's. Now we get down to business. Sweet 16. Thursday night it starts. You get a couple days leading up to it of St. John's Duke talk and comparing the teams and the injury updates. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Patino and his reaction yesterday. And listen, it was great. It was great. He had no reaction. He just kind of, bam. I knew that was going in. Never a doubt. And he walked over, he shook the hand, and then that was Bill Self, and that was it. And he went into the locker room. And then he told the story at the press conference about how Darling came up to him, said, let's run this play. It's my play, blah, blah, blah. Hadn't hit a shot, went up with the right hand. He's a lefty. And it all goes into March Madness lore. So we got it. St. John's 2 wins away from Final Four. You can't ask for more than that. Mets and Yankees starting this week. We're going to have guests. We're going to do a preview show. We're going to have a show on Thursday where we're talking about Mets opening day. We'll be recapping Yankees opening day. And then Friday, it's going to be basketball. It's going to be St. John's. Until this thing ends, until this run ends, it's around here, it's going to be St. John's top story. They're going to be stealing the back pages, stealing the front pages, both the Mets and Yankees. That says a lot. That shows what this means to this city and this team, and they are New York's team. So it starts again on Thursday. I hope your brackets are doing better than mine. I hope you're in the running in your pools. I hope you had one of the 2 perfect brackets left, although I think we would have heard about it by now if it was anybody we knew. But that does it for us. That's our tournament recap. Don't forget, we will have the St. John's game. We did the St. John's game. I did the St. John's game last night, play-by-play, radio-style broadcast. Check it out. I thought it came out pretty good. I got to call a buzzer beater. It was fun. That's on YouTube. It's also on Facebook, and we did it all over the place. But we will have that again this week coming up for the St. John's Duke game Friday. Maybe for one of the other games too. Maybe for the UConn Michigan State game. But we'll see. So Friday night it gets started. Don't forget to join us. Don't forget to like the page. Don't forget to subscribe to the page and leave us a review if you're listening on the podcast end. We'll see you. We'll see you coming up. Busy week. Baseball opening day. NCAA tournament, and then we're bam right into the spring. Good weather in the summer. It's gonna be great. It's only uphill from here, everybody. Uphill from here. So that does it for me. I'm Bob Walters. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching from the Brian Gunzel Studios. See ya.